So let me broaden out a little bit, if you don't mind. Why on earth is it important to do research in psychology? Surely it's just about helping people. What's the point of it?
That's again a really good question. So this is something that I always try and explain to sort of
Sure.
not only our applicants but also our students is that you kind of have two sides of the coin. You either can, I mean, psychology is so broad that you can also go into kind of what we call like psychology informed careers, and there's loads of careers, for example, that
Sure.
I always say there's no career that doesn't involve psychology
Yeah.
because that human kind of sort of like element is present in everything, even things like AI and computing. I had a lecturer at Warwick who his undergraduate wasn't actually even psychology, it was computer science, but then
Yeah.
his research was in kind of computational models of language learning and those kind of things. So it fit really neatly with that kind of cognitive psychology. But when applicants come in, I think you're right, a lot of them think of sort of like that practitioner based
Yeah.
psychology. So they want to be health psychs or they want to be clinical counselling psychologists, ed psychs, and they all kind of share this sort of common theme, I suppose, of kind of identifying challenges and then kind of putting in place sort of like remediation, and that's what people tend to think of. But actually, there's a whole other side, which is the research and the academia. And like I said, there's 9 chartered psychology titles that are protected sort of like by the BPS, and some of them obviously can go on to sort of like get further registration with the Healthcare and Professions Council. But the research side of things is kind of, I guess, it underpins and it informs practice, and I think that's why it's so important. So even in COVID, for example, you saw that a lot of the research that went on took place at universities, right? So they trialed the vaccines at universities, and it's the same for psychology and psychological practice as well. So ed psych and educational psychologists work based on the literature that is coming out of academics working at universities. So we have to inform that practice and we have to make it evidence based. And it's universities that are doing that research. We need to sort of get out there. We need to do what we call primary research, which is where you have a sample, you collect the data and you analyze it in some way, and draw conclusions. And within research, there's many different tiers. It goes from kind of sort of your very quasi experimental approaches right through to your kind of randomized controlled trials, which is sort of like much kind of like stricter and a sort of like the gold standard of kind of scientific sort of like evidence. But all of it is just really important for informing practice and policy, and we see it all the time.
Sure.
Sorry.
No. I want to split it into two,
Mhm.
like the outcomes. I mean, there's more than two outcomes in research, always. So there's an important principle here about research. Research is there for its own sake. It's not outcome based. I mean, it does have outcomes, of course it does. But research is important. Knowledge is important. That's what makes the human race so special, is our acquisition and sharing of knowledge. And that's why we survived rather than other forms of humans, because we're social in nature and we share stuff.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's the assumption of our species survive because we do this sharing of information and knowledge, and so we need to preserve that. I think as a fundamental principle, that's what gives us the edge, if you like. But let's imagine a simple world in which there are two types of outcomes, which we're going to sort of look at a little bit. One is the sort of clinical outcomes that you said, the research that underpins what's called evidence-based practice, the stuff at the chalk face or the coal face, if you like, that is helping people. And then there's the other bit, which we're sort of probably going to touch on a bit more today, which is the knowledge and evidence that informs policy
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
social and political policy, and
Mhm.
interventions on a broader, more population type scale. Um,
Yes.
let's imagine there's only those two outcomes. No, as you pointed out, there's lots more.
If you like this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.